So then we kind of have to back ourselves all the way out and say, all right.
We're getting up at 4.
Oh, hello there.
Pete and Allie from Two Tiny Wings here, and today we are going to talk about the latest and greatest ride that just opened at Disney's Hollywood Studios, Rise of the Resistance. More importantly, what happens if some big ticket ride opens right before you are about to go to Disney?
Because we've got an upcoming trip in the next week and a half, and it all of a sudden created a big change to some of our plans because it was something that we weren't necessarily planning for when we set all of our FastPasses out weeks and weeks ago, and dining reservations and all of that, so we had to have some flexibility to it.
And I think there's also the issue of Disney has been very flexible with how Rise of the Resistance is operating, not only with how they are boarding for this ride, but also with the park hours. So I think that brings us to our first tip. Check the park hours. Disney modifies things all the time. Last week, right after Rise of the Resistance opened, sometimes the park was opening at 6 a.m. Currently, it looks like it's opening at 8 a.m. most days. But again,
it's been very dynamic where they even moved between now and when we're going, it's going to open at 7, but then the week that we're there, it's going to open at 8. And they've been trying to manage getting more park hours to manage all of the crowds and all of the excitement for this ride.
So monitor the park hours. You can do that through your My Disney Experience app. There is a place right where all of the park hours are posted, and you can keep updating and checking just to make sure that all of a sudden a park is not opening suddenly earlier than you thought.
And don't forget to include extra magic hours when you're keeping that consideration, because that's that exclusive on-site, if you're staying on-site, where a limited number of guests can be there, and that is part of it, the thing that can change as well.
So the second thing you want to do is also think about how this big ticket ride might affect your FastPass plans. Now, Rise of the Resistance is a little bit different because they're not using FastPasses for it. Currently, and we are in December of 2019, Hollywood Studios is using boarding groups for Rise of the Resistance. So once you are in the park, you can join a boarding group and essentially reserve your spot.
Yeah, think of it like as a virtual line. So you get yourself in line, and then instead of physically sitting in the line, you have a spot for when they call you to then go ride the ride.
Now, this plays into the park hours because we've been monitoring pretty closely when these boarding groups have filled up. There are a finite number of spots available on this ride daily. Generally, boarding groups have filled up within an hour after the park opens.
Yeah.
So if you want to get on some big ticket ride, figure out how the heck they're going to be boarding that ride. And if it's something like boarding groups, like Rise of the Resistance, you need to be at the park before the posted hour of opening to get into the park and reserve your spot.
And so that's really kind of what our strategy is going into this. We looked at all those things and realized, all right, the park's opening at 8. What we then found through some research, looking at the park hours, looking at Facebook groups and some message boards, that the park physically was actually opening at around 6 o'clock. So 6 to 6:30. So before even the described park hours in the app. And then, like Ali said, hour to 2 hours after that, so maybe 8 o'clock, 8:30, all the boarding groups were taken up. So we kind of said, all right, we know the timing that we have to use in order to get to the park. We said, all right, we know we probably got to get there 6:30, so that we know we're in line, we get into the park, we can get the boarding group, and then we can go. So then we kind of have to back ourselves all the way out and say, all right,
we're getting up at 4.
If we've got to get there... If we've got to get there between 6 and 6:30, and we're staying at Pop Century, we've got to sit there and say, all right, we probably need to leave maybe 5:30, 5:15. So we've got to get up probably 5 o'clock, 4:45. So you kind of got to back yourself out of it. Now, the other issue, I think, is making sure if you're staying wherever you're staying, that you have the transportation that you need to get where you're going.
And that's where we're at now, trying to figure out if we're going to be able to take the Skyliner. If not, I think worst case scenario is the buses will be running, or we can always call an Uber or a Lyft.
And one of the things that I've heard other people say through our research is for the transportation piece, have a plan, and then have a backup, and then have another backup, so that if all of a sudden,
running.
for example, if you all of a sudden say, I'm going to try to take the bus, but you all of a sudden get there in the morning and the bus is taking a while, don't be afraid to say, all right, we're going to have to take an Uber, or try to have some other option if you can, so that because you might only have that one day to try to ride that really big ticket item, and so it's nice to have a backup and then a backup to your backup.
I think that overall our advice is research and figure out, this is something where you do have to plan. You have to figure out what it is you want to get on. And if, for us, we have a full day. Rise of the Resistance is the goal. And so we're gonna get up early, we're gonna get to the park at least an hour before the scheduled opening time. We're gonna do our best to make sure we get in that park and on those boarding groups. If that's not a priority for you, terrific. But if you want to get on that ride and it's not a fast pass ride, and it's not a ride where you can use the get there early or stay late strategy, where you kind of get on the ride right before the park closes, make sure you have a plan, a backup plan, and a backup plan.
And I think prioritizing it for us, the other side of it that we haven't really talked about, but to kind of on the back end, is that, all right, this is a priority. So some of the other plans that we have for the days, we've already kind of talked about it. All right, we're willing to let this fast pass maybe not happen, or we may not get to this particular ride or this particular show later in the day. And we're kind of all right with that because we realize, hey, we're prioritizing this other thing that is really, really important to us that we haven't seen before. So you've got to, for yourself, got to weigh those different things and what is the most important thing for you and whoever you're traveling with.
And it sounds nuts, but from everything we have heard about this ride, it is an incredible, incredible experience. So yes, I will get up at 4:30.
Yes.
And join him. So, have you been on Rise of the Resistance? Definitely let us know what your strategy was. Did you get to the park early? Were they letting people in? Like this video, subscribe so you can keep up with our December trip to see if our plan actually works and we get on this ride. And with that,
we invite you to set your imaginations free.